If even God can be jealous, what's the hope for the rest of us? Hey guys, it's Katie, your host of Faith at Work, and today we're going to be talking about jealousy. Jealousy is one of those things that can take your relationship out like that. And I was thinking about the way that in the beginning of the Bible, we're reading the Bible recap and we're reading Genesis and Deuteronomy and Numbers and all this. And God repeatedly says, I'm a jealous God. And that's what people throw back. They're like, well, jealousy's okay. God was even jealous. Well, it's not quite the same. So I want to read to you what jealousy is to God and why God is jealous of us wanting to worship or serve another God or an idol. God wants our full trust in Him. He desires exclusive devotion. So Exodus 25, bowing down or serving anyone but God leads to destruction. I mean, how true is that? If you put something or somebody before God, your life literally spirals into destruction. If you are focusing on anger, resentment, things like that, listen to the description of what, if you just look up jealousy, what it says. A complex emotion that can include feelings of suspicion, rage, humiliation, anger, resentment, hostility, inadequacy, bitterness. I mean, are there worse words literally in the English language than those? Those are exactly the opposite of what you want to be. And here's the other thing. These are triggered by the perception, right? So it's the perception of a threat to a valued relationship that you have. But that threat, that can actually be real. Obviously, we've all had those instances, right? Where you think someone's cheating or you think someone's doing something and then you find out they are. So it doesn't mean that that wasn't real. But then the other thing is it can be imagined. And not only imagine, what does your imagination do? My imagination goes crazy.com. Okay. So when Anthony, my husband, when we first got started dating, there was this girl that he would like go to coffee with because we weren't 100% dating yet. You know, you were in that kind of like friendship zone, but you knew something was going to happen. And I would get so jealous and I'd start comparing myself to her. It's all these things, right? So what they say that insecurities are rooted in. We're going to list what are insecurities or like what is the fear that's happening when you have this jealous feeling come over you. It's the fear of oversimplification, inadequacy, abandonment. That's a huge one. Being replaced or being judged. In all of those things, you start going into a spiral in your head. Like, is she better looking than me? Is she smarter than me? Does she treat him better? Does she look at him different? Like, what is your significant other thinking? And then me and Val started talking about this because this happens between girls. Like, I don't know how jealous guys get. They do. I've seen it. I've seen guys get like jealous, like, oh, you're going to get a beer with him or you're going to watch the game over there, like jealous. But women, it's like a whole nother level. So Val, what has been your experience with jealousy?
So I've struggled a lot with jealousy, especially when I was in high school before I'd really kind of understood that this was a bad thing and not just like totally normal for everyone to feel all the time. I was so jealous that my friends would abandon me, basically. Like really inadequacy really stuck out to me from that list. That if for some reason my friends started being friends without me and I wasn't like the glue that held the friendship together, suddenly everyone would abandon me and leave me behind. And I don't know where this came from. I mean, my parents were together and my home was happy and there was no reason, but just something. One of the things that I've struggled with my whole life is jealousy. And so I was just telling Katie, I have a bachelorette trip coming up. I have a group of gals that I've actually stayed friends with for years, which is really hard. Amazing. Really tough. But two of them knew each other for a long time. We all met in high school and they re-met up recently. And my maid of honor was telling me, she was like, oh, I'm so glad I got to see this friend. I'm so glad we got to reconnect. And I was like, in my head, I was like, oh yeah, great. But there was this little inkling in my soul that was like, oh my gosh, they're going to become best friends and they're both going to leave you and they're never going to want to talk to you again. And just started spiraling immediately. And I was like, I thought we were past this. I really thought I was past this, but it's always going to be a thing for me to deal with. And I'm sure for a lot of people. And for me, like Katie was saying, it's always kind of manifested more in my friendships because I'm someone who intimacy is number one. And you have intimacy in romantic relationships, but you have it in your friendships too. So if anything appears like a threat to that, I start to freak.
You have to get rid of it, right? Oh my gosh, I was thinking about so many things, but like you look at a show like Survivor or something, right? Where they all of a sudden someone's walking over to the water with someone else and they're like, "Oh my gosh, is that person turning on me? Am I like not in the clique? Am I not in the vote?" That kind of thing. It's like that's what life is like. And I know that for me, when your relationships are solid, this is a lot harder to get to you. When me and Anthony were going through a really hard time, and God, praise God, God saved my marriage. If I did not have a relationship with God and didn't find a couple of resources that will actually put a low, if you're struggling in your marriage right now because of jealousy or just mistrust, if you're just losing that foundation of trust with your significant other, I have the perfect book for you, and I'll put it below. But in general, because we weren't in a good place, it's a lot easier for me to believe that he would cheat on me, right? Like Anthony wouldn't cheat on me, but it's a lot easier for me to believe that he would if me and him aren't good. And it's the same thing with your relationships with your best friend or a girl down the street or your mom or whatever. Like if things aren't 100% clicking, it's so much easier to look at that and be like, oh my gosh, like why wouldn't he cheat on me? We're not connecting as much, or I said this mean thing to him, or you know what I mean? Like if you're working on your relationship and you're in a solid place, jealousy is almost gone. I mean, it's all about the trust. And that same thing with your relationship with God. If you have trust that God is literally keeping us, all the commandments, what are they for? Are they for serving God? Yes, but he's having us do all these things that are better for us. They keep us in better relationships with each other. They protect us from harm and hurt. I mean, what is the worst case scenario if you follow the 10 commandments? It's all pretty powerful and pretty special for us and for our relationships on earth. Those commandments are not for when we get to heaven. Those are for now. Those are for us to act more like the image of God, which is what we were created to be with each other right here, right now. So don't forget that. And the one verse that kind of came up to me was James 3:16. Wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there is disorder and everything that is evil. And I wanted to go through the Bible stories because I thought this was really interesting. We're reading, with the Bible recap, we're in Genesis, Leviticus, all these things. So Genesis 2, Eve's desire for what she didn't have, right? She was jealous. Like, well, why does God keep that from you? So she wanted to, and then she did our first sin. Then Genesis 4, Cain to murder his brother Abel. So that sibling rivalry, right? Like me and my sister don't get along. I'm not going to cause harm for her. I actually think about that Bible verse a lot. Like, love your enemies. I know it's weird to think of someone that's in your family as an enemy, but I think an enemy is just anybody who doesn't give you peace. It doesn't have to be someone who's trying to take you out or kill you. I mean, like in our days, it's a little bit different, right? I think it's anyone that you don't have peace over, you need to pray for that person because ultimately prayer is what's going to bring them to a better relationship and alignment with where you are going with your life. And then Genesis 30, the strife between Leah and Rachel, right? So when they are sisters and they're married to the same man, but Jacob loved Rachel. And so Leah's always going to be kind of like jealous of her sister and wanting to crave for that relationship. I had this with my dad. Anyone daddy issues? I had this with my dad, just craving for him to see me, to appreciate me, to like, I just get his approval, right? I think we're always fighting for our parents' approval and just wishing like, do they love you? Or like, what do you have to do to earn their love? And how awesome is it that God is so much better? What a better father-daughter relationship that I could have with Jesus. And that relationship isn't conditional, right? It's not conditioned upon. Yes, there's a lot of if and thens in the Bible. If you do this, if you serve me, if you seek me first, you will be blessed. Those are like rewards. Those aren't like life or death, right? Like those are extra benefits that we get here on earth. If we follow God and we serve him, we're going to get these things. And then the other one, Joseph. I don't know if you guys saw Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat. Come on, go, 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 Joseph. You know what they say. I'm telling you, this is like, I was obsessed with Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat. I grew up in downtown Chicago where it was like a huge thing. Donny Osmond, anybody in the chat? No, I'm too old. Okay, we'll talk about it later. But in general, that was my favorite story from the Bible because I saw it come to life with music. But the jealousy that they had over Joseph, that they would actually go to kill him and then go, oh, let's not kill him. That's bad. We're going to sell him into slavery. And then what God was able to do from the ruins with Joseph is so amazing. If you don't know that story, you need to look that up. And then the biggest one, Mark 15:10, when the chief priests hand over Jesus to be crucified, was all about jealousy. It was all about the fact that they were like the big guys, right? Like, we're the priests, we are the all-knowing, we're the closest to God. And then you basically have God there and people following this other person instead of listening and like idolizing everything that you say. And something that I recently read in the Bible was like kings and priests and things like that. They weren't supposed to have anything of their own. They weren't supposed to have like all these possessions and all this money and all this, pride. They were supposed to serve others. So think about that with our government today, that our government was literally put together. It's back to biblical times of when the government was supposed to help the community just basically do what's right with each other, right? It was trying to keep us from the crazy things that humans do to each other. And the government was set up to keep everybody in line and to make sure that things were just and that they were fair. And we have come a really, really long way from that. And we'll do a couple episodes on that. And I just hope that when you guys are actually jealous, you start looking at things like, is it that you just need to strengthen your relationship with God? Is it that you need to strengthen your relationship with the people that you're having that like tinge of jealousy with? Or is it something you really need to work on yourself? Like, do you need to start to love, care, and know that you are chosen, that you are uniquely made for a special purpose under God? And we just hope that you find that. We'd love to talk to you about it in the comments. And until then, stay elevated.